Hi, welcome to the Get Strong and Healthy podcast. My name is Anna Clow. Thank you for being here. Today we have a special guest joining us. We have Philip Pape here today on the show. So I'm really excited to dive into this conversation with you today, Philip. And for our listeners, I want you guys to know that Philip has his own incredible podcast, Wits and Weights. And we have done a sort of dual episode where we've split up this conversation into two. So you can go find the portion where Philip interviewed me. We're talking about health and longevity on his podcast platform. So definitely go check his out. I'll put the link in the show notes. But today we're going to be talking sort of the flip of aesthetics and focusing on body composition, muscle gain, and just the differences between the two. There's a ton of crossover, of course, but there are differences with these different goals. And so these two episodes are going to be really valuable for you to learn what are the most important things to focus on, what to worry about, what not to worry about. So, Philip, thank you so much for coming on. And I'd love if you start us off with just introducing yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anna. This is definitely a fun collaboration. And we're going to talk about some of the things that I deal with every day, both on the show and with clients. And that is, how do we improve our physical form, which also affects our mental health, affects our longevity, affects our body image, and just kind of all of it doing it efficiently because we're all busy. Like, I deal with folks who are generally 40s, 50s, and beyond. And like me, I have an engineering background. They might have desk jobs. They might be super busy and just bombarded by the information in the fitness industry, so confused, really smart, really curious folks, like anybody listening to this show as well. And like, what do I do? Just tell me what to do. What's up with these cuts and bulks over here? What is it with the seed oils? Like just everything. What do I do? And so we try to simplify it and just say, hey, let's be efficient about it. Let's be smart. Let's use some frameworks, some engineering and systems, and get you where you want to be. So kind of high level of where I come from.
I love it. I love it so much. And I'm so happy we connected because just like you said, I feel like we align really well in terms of our philosophies and everything. So
Yeah, we're
yeah.
all brainwashed by the same nutrition coaches and certs, right? No. It's called research. It's called research.
Yeah, come on. No, but so let's just dive into things with, I guess, if you could start us off, what's the difference between training for health versus training for physique? And then maybe actually, what are we talking about? What's physique? What are aesthetics versus talking about health?
Yeah, I have two possible answers. The first answer is, for most people, not much of a difference. Like for most people, if you train for health and longevity, like we talked about on my show when you were on, you're going to also get a great physique. However, there are differences in the sense of focus, time, efficiency, and your approach, like your methods with your training, sometimes with your food, whether you need to like go after building muscle and gaining some weight, yes, to build muscle or not, right? So health and longevity, I'm gonna say it doesn't have a very high bar, and that's a good thing. Like if you live an active, fit, strength training based lifestyle, you can be super healthy and live a long, healthy life. If you want to then go on and build symmetry in your physique, and you want to build bigger muscle size, and you want to like specialize in like getting a perkier butt or bigger quads or whatever the thing is you're going for, that's kind of what we talk about with physique. The extreme being physique competition, which is not my area whatsoever. I'm a 44-year-old guy who started training properly when I was about 40 after years and years of CrossFit and just doing the wrong things. So I know that it's about the change over time and being happy with the progress you're making rather than looking at an Instagram model with a six pack and making that your standard. So to me, physique is just improving your body along with your health.
Yeah, love it. Awesome. So talk to us about how hypertrophy training, meaning muscle building focused training, can support, things like long-term metabolic health or just anything else that is helpful for us to know.
I think it is highly, highly underrated. So while sure, getting stronger for health is also important. We talked about like osteoporosis and things like that on the other show, bone density. Muscle mass itself is like magical, right? It's an endocrine organ. Some argue, I think it's like your biggest organ in terms of surface area. It releases cytokines that help improve inflammation. They promote metabolic health. We talked about how it's a sink for glucose. So it helps you not only utilize carbs, but eat more carbs, which we all want to do because we've been demonized and conditioned to think that they're bad. We know that it can reduce HbA1c, which is a marker of metabolic health. It can reduce the symptoms of type 2 diabetes, even once you have diabetes, even without weight loss. So the cool thing, Anna, is I'll see, and I'm sure you do as well, I'll see a client, like a male client who's been lifting weights for 20 years, who has excess body fat, like a decent amount of excess body fat, but their health markers are all better than another person of the same weight who doesn't have the muscle. And so it just goes to show that like building muscle is a huge mitigator against your lifestyle. Not that you're going to go drink and smoke and everything else, but it's a nice mitigator. And then combined with reasonable attention to body fat and fat loss, it accelerates your health. Plus you can eat more food. You can eat more food because you're burning more calories. So I forgot that one.
We all love that.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I love that so much. And tell us, like, when chasing aesthetics can become unsustainable, because I know that I've been there. I think a lot of us have maybe gotten to that point one time or another where we can tell in our bodies and in our minds that, what am I even doing? This is too much. And then maybe that leads people to swing way too far the other way and like let go of, training and prioritizing their health, which we don't want. But when does chasing aesthetics become kind of a unsustainable, unhealthy type of thing?
I think a good way to frame this is to narrow down aesthetics and how we define it for different people. So if your definition of aesthetics is being as lean and shredded and cut as possible, that's where the issues can come in. You may have an unhealthy ideal for what a healthy body looks like. That's very subjective. There is a biological component to what like attractive looks like or what a good body image looks like. And people have disorders over these things as well. But I think it's the chasing of the leanness that becomes the big problem, because at its extreme, you could get REDS, for example, which is relative energy deficiency syndrome, especially affecting women when it comes to hormones like amenorrhea, your period stops and all of your reproductive hormones plummet, and testosterone and thyroid hormone as well. So like those are the dangers of the extremes of chasing aesthetics when you're always dieting, when you're then low on sleep, right? You're obsessed with your appearance. You have a low libido, like irritability, all the things. And I've talked a couple of times on my show about the cost of getting lean, right? So that's when it becomes unsustainable, when you instead reframe it as just wanting to show up for yourself and be confident, right? Like really frame it in terms of why you want the aesthetics in a deeper way connected to the purpose and meaning in your life. I think you can find a happy medium where you're not doing that. But again, it depends on the individual.
Yeah. I love that you brought in the why behind it all. I think that's what leads to the overall psychology of how you're doing things. Are you doing this out of a place of, oh, I hate myself, I need to punish myself? Or are you like, hey, this is really fun, I love this, I want to do this because I want to be the best version of myself? That's a whole nother lens to come at things from and talk about stress that all that criticism would put on your body. And the body keeps score. The body knows when you're stressed, whether it's a physical stressor or it's that mental stress. And I see this so much in the aesthetics world is people are extremely hard on themselves, and that just leads you to wild burnout. And so I love that you mentioned that, is like, come at it from the right angle, and that's going to do you so much good.
Well, the irony, I think, is ultimately to get the best physique, which objectively simply means, an improved body composition, right? More muscle, not necessarily less net fat, but like a lower percentage of body fat, right? In other words, what people usually need to do is actually gain some weight and build some muscle at some point. And it's funny, I've had like elite level bodybuilders on my show, and they'll say the same thing. I'm like, what's the thing most people are not doing? Well, they never spend time in an improvement phase, trying to build muscle. And so it is a long game, because the building muscle phase can be a little self-defeating if you only care about your looks because you're not going to necessarily look better immediately. It's going to take time to add the muscle and then chisel it away. So that's the big irony of it all. When you're just chasing leanness, it's even not going to give you the aesthetics anyway.
Yeah. And something else with that, you sort of made me think of, it's funny, like on my journey, I've noticed the times where I, like, in a way, care the least, meaning I'm just the least neurotic about my physique, is when it looks the best. And so, like, just thinking about that on your journey, if maybe you're in a place where you're extremely hyperfixated, neurotic about it, like, chill out about that a little bit. See how that potentially affects you. And then I feel like also it just makes things go by a lot faster, because when you're so hyper fixated on it every day, you might be body checking, you might be just really, really dialed in and focused on every day the scale has to go down or whatever it is. And it's like we need to sort of release some of that pressure. And all of a sudden, you do that, and it feels like you get to where you want to be so much faster.
Yeah, you highlighted another irony for folks who aren't quite ready to get there yet, like they haven't built the habits, and that is we want to track and measure things, but if you get obsessed with what you're tracking in the short term, it can be defeating. So you mentioned pressure, right? How do you reduce pressure from yourself? And obviously working with a qualified professional or coach helps because they can take off some of that emotional stress from you and help you reframe the data as just almost meaningless data points in the short term, but over the long term, it'll give us some informed decision making.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that could be like a whole nother episode, is just
Of
talking
course,
about
tracking and
the
data.
psychology of all of that. And
Yes.
especially, yeah, someone new to their journey and just the scale weight, or, the hyperfixation of all these different data points. But I love how you said that. But tell us a little bit about, let's talk about nutrition. What are some strategies that we take for nutrition when it comes to muscle gain and fat loss in like the aesthetics world, and how might that be different from nutrition strategies when it comes to health and longevity as the number one? And again, I know there's probably so many answers to this, but what are your thoughts?
No, I like the question because if someone came on the street and just asked me that, right, versus us setting it up for the audience here, I would say not much. Like honestly, the only difference is what periodized goal are you going after now? Are you trying to lose fat, trying to gain weight, trying to maintain? I still want my clients who are building muscle and thinking about aesthetics to eat healthy. I want them, and by healthy, I don't mean good or bad foods, right? We mean whole nutritious foods, plenty of protein, plenty of flexibility as well. Using mindfulness, not just when you eat, but mindfulness across the days and weeks, like meal planning, meal prep, thinking about your life and adjusting accordingly. If anything, going after aesthetics as a goal short term is going to require either getting lean and doing a fat loss phase because you've already built muscle, or putting on the shelf the getting lean part until you build muscle. And then it becomes more of a 9 to 12 month process instead of like a 3 or 4 month process. So you really have to assess where you at. Do you have that boulder that can be sculptured, or are you still a pebble that needs to grow into a boulder? Right. And so once you've identified that, then it's just a matter of what we talk about: flexible dieting, identify your anchor protein minimum, identify fats and carbs and your energy that you need, and then prioritize whole nutritious foods and fill in the rest with whatever makes sense. Aesthetic, like there's no other differences, right? Like for aesthetics versus health versus longevity, you need to be eating healthy. I guess the only differences could be when you're building muscle and trying to gain weight. What we experience sometimes is metabolic adaptation in that direction, where your metabolism starts to skyrocket and you get into like hard gaining challenges, and now you have to eat a lot more food. Sometimes you get creative and lean a little bit more into some processed foods and other things that people would not consider healthy, but in the totality of your dietary pattern, it's fine. Like the amounts, the dosage makes the poison, etc. It's actually fine, and you're only doing it for a short period. Yeah, that's what comes to mind for me, Anna.
Yeah, totally. Like I know someone who, I'll just say my boyfriend. I'm like, why am I not sharing that? So my boyfriend eats, when he eats really healthy, he cannot get near enough the amount of calories he
Yeah.
needs. And I just, I kind of like coach him a little bit with like, hey, I think it's okay to, eat some of this stuff as well, because he knows that I'm a nutrition coach and I try and help him. But yeah, just sometimes you do have to eat a little bit more of the less, healthy foods, and just being able to incorporate more of that. So, like on this note,
Yeah.
you had a point you were going to share.
Yeah, and I was thinking on the other side of that for fat loss is if you are quote unquote chasing aesthetics, you're probably going to want to lean out at some point and maybe do so a little more aggressively or deeper than someone else might because you're chasing the aesthetics. In that case, you do run the risk for malnutrition, not having enough nutrients, not having enough of something. For example, if your calories are fairly low and you still need a good amount of protein to preserve your muscle, well, now your fats and carbs take a hit. And so your energy might not be as high. You need to be strategic about putting those carbs around your workout or at night to help you sleep. Like there's a lot of little subtle trade-offs and creative strategies you have to do that are more precise. And even like looking at your lifestyle and what you're doing, are you traveling, are you doing this or that, may not align with the goals. So all of those can come into play with eating quote unquote healthy even while you are trying to chase aesthetics.
Yeah. Yeah. And would you also maybe argue like nutrient timing, such as like, post workout meals, maybe intra being like more important and maybe not so much when we're talking about just health?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, that's a good point, right? Although I would argue that like even if you're training, you want to support the training so that you get the most growth out of your training. So still, you're going to want to have some carbs and protein before, some carbs and protein after. Don't train fasted for the vast majority of people unless you know for a fact that it's better for you. And always be experimenting. Like in my opinion, the best, physique competitors, for example, that we can learn from them, right? Like we can extrapolate from them back to like the everyday person, have experimented with 50 different ways to do this and found the sweet spot for them. You might need more carbs than someone else, or more protein than someone else, or different timing than someone else. And we didn't even talk about strength training yet, I realize. But anyway, we can get to that.
Yeah, talk to us about strength
Yes.
training and okay, how do we improve our physique? What's the foundation of all of that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, do you have the base to build from? If you don't have a base, if you're a beginner, I would definitely prioritize strength no matter what. I actually did an episode called Strength versus Hypertrophy. And if you look at the data, it's pretty clear that when you start, what's the statistic? Like there's like something goes from 3% to 65%. It has to do with how beneficial it is to get strong toward building muscle. And as you get more advanced, you need more hypertrophy. You need more like mid to higher rep range, isolation, accessory work versus just big compound lifts. But when you're a beginner, the best use of your time for both strength and muscle is compound lifts. So do that for about 3, 6, maybe 9 months, and then start adding in, maybe you go from a 3-day full body to like a 4-day split in the interest of both time and having enough volume and frequency. So just to summarize it all, if you can get 10 to 20 sets per muscle group per week, that's usually in a good range for what we call hypertrophy, building muscle. And then it's a matter of what you care to focus on. So again, if you're a woman who like is big into glutes, not to stereotype, but I do hear it all the time, you might need to add hip thrusts in there, but you're still doing squats, deadlifts, and pressing, right? If you're a guy who wants bigger guns, you may need some more chin-ups and curls and things like that, but you're still squatting, deadlift, pressing. So it's a matter of frequency, volume, and hitting the spots that you need based on your response to that volume. Sometimes women have higher recovery and volume response than men and need more, but it's very individualized.
Yeah. Yeah, love it. So we've sort of alluded to a lot of this throughout, the other episode and already in this episode, but tell us, what are the different trade-offs that we see when we're pushing for extreme leanness or, size? Like if someone is maybe pursuing like a more bodybuilding type approach, what sort of trade-offs do we see when it comes to our health?
A lot, a lot more than you would think too, because I've learned from having experts on my show who are in that world. Hormones are the big one, right? Hormones are the kind of the root of everything in our body, the chemical signals. They connect everything. They connect your gut, your brain, everything. So they are going to get suppressed when you're losing weight, and they're going to get massively suppressed when you're going to the extreme, not just doing it quickly, but actually getting lean. Like not having the body fat on your body is a signal to your body that you need to go get some. Like, hey, go get me some fat back on my body or I might die at some point. And the more you get close to that extreme, which most people haven't gotten there, the more your body needs some fine tuning and love to avoid issues. Immune function, you could get sick much more easily when you're lean. Like people don't realize that. These bodybuilders get sick a lot. Your libido is crashed. You know, if your sex life is important to you, consider who you're with and the timing and all of that. And it might not be your testosterone. It's because you're getting lean, which then affects your testosterone. So that's the extreme leanness. I mean, there are a lot of other things I probably didn't even mention. I would say the other side of chasing size and leanness is the massing too aggressively as well and getting too fat. Let's just call it that. Like getting too high of body fat, insulin resistance, poor appetite regulation, all of that. So there's a sweet spot. That's kind of, I think I mentioned that on my show, where even I know, like, I don't want to be too lean. I want to just float around at like 14 to 16% for me. For some guys, it might be 12. For others, it might be 18. You know, for women, you know, you add about 10% to that. Find where that is for you so that you could just enjoy your life most of the time.
Yeah. TLDR, don't take the bulk too far.
Yeah. Because you have to cut it back for sure.
Yes. Yeah. So cool. I wanna talk more about recovery and stress. We talked a bit about this on our other episode, but how important is that for when it comes to chasing physique goals?
I'll put it simply, right? When you hit a heavy weight in the gym, that is a stimulus, right? That is something telling your body that, whoa, like you're using these muscles and really pushing something heavy, and we're barely able to accommodate it, but we're there for you. Then when you go to sleep, right, your body says, I need to recover because you just like slammed my muscle capacity, the use of my fibers, and we need to grow those sarcomeres just a bit, right? This is part of the musculoskeletal cells just a bit so that next time you hit those same loads, it feels easier. That's adaptation. That's where the recovery comes into play. So you've probably heard the adage, like, our muscles are built when we sleep. I mean, I wouldn't go that far. You still have to go to the gym, right? You still have to get the stimulus. But the stimulus to fatigue ratio and the idea of having adequate, not only sleep, but the nutrition is part of your recovery. Carbs are part of your recovery. Rest days, like if you're going to do cardio along with your lifting, be very strategic about where that goes. You may not want it on a rest day. You may want it at the end of an upper body day before a rest day, so you recover in time for your leg day, right? So cortisol, I think, is probably the core that glues all this together, because when you don't have enough recovery, your body perceives it as any other form of chronic stress. Cortisol is elevated, it's fight or flight, and that leads to all the other things we've talked about: poor appetite regulation, poor sleep, muscle protein breakdown, right? You can't quite build as much muscle, reduced anabolic signaling. So recovery is God when it comes to your training.
Yeah.
Or goddess.
Yeah, it's so important. And like on this topic, I think that a really good maybe way to sort of tie in this conversation is talking a little bit more on the psychological side of aesthetics. I know I love touching on this piece of things, but let's talk about like body image and just like how that ties into our aesthetics, how that might affect even your recovery and your stress, because I definitely think that the two are intertwined.
Yeah, it's funny. I just recorded an episode about chasing aesthetics where I dug into this topic a bit more. And I think what it comes down to, a couple things, is comparison traps that we get into if we don't already have some sense of self-worth, right? And I think you alluded to this as well on my show, is that body dysmorphia and things like that get exacerbated when you chase aesthetic goals if you don't already go through a process and work on yourself to that level of self-worth. So for many people listening, you may just want to not even worry about chasing aesthetics at all and focus on building an energy and supporting yourself and self-love and care and all that. There's also a framing opportunity. I think that strength and muscle gain build a lot of confidence. I think you talked about that on my show as well, right? It builds a ton of confidence. And it does so not because you look good. That's nice. But you get that confidence very early on from the wins that you get progressing and building competence. Ooh, that's good. That's a soundbite right there.
That's a mic drop.
Okay. Yeah. So that's what it comes down to, is like you are developing skills based on pushing yourself like you've never pushed before, and you're growing from it, and doing it to your physical body is a nice way to do it because you can see the change fairly quickly. And then you could apply that to your relationships, your career, your everything else in life. I think I kind of answered the question a little bit, right? You've got to be in a healthy place first before you go after these goals. And then when you go after the goals, the process itself can build more competence and confidence.
Yes. Wow, I love that. For building confidence, you need to build competence.
There you go. I love it.
Awesome. So, I guess let's kind of wrap this up with maybe what are some tactical tools for someone who's looking to really improve their aesthetics, chase some exciting goals? Maybe we can talk about volume, intensity. What are the overall progressions? Like, what does that look like? And then also maybe let's kind of leave this off with, how do we find balance with looking good, feeling good, moving along in healthy life?
Ooh, tactical tools. I think it's the establishing the pillars of a healthy lifestyle first. So this is going to tie our two episodes together really nicely because on my show you talked about health and longevity. Well, the habits of strength training, proper nutrition, recovery, sleep, all of that, doing it in a low stress environment where you are not chasing a particular goal, not trying to gain size, not trying to lose weight, none of that will really set you up to then go after the goal. And then tactically you can say, okay, do I need to gain? Do I need to lose? Like it's almost as simple as that. If you are fairly comfortable in your skin at that point and you don't feel like you have weight to lose for health reasons or even self-image reasons, you can probably gain, and you can do so very conservatively the first time and just do it over 6 or 9 months. If you've never done that before and you've been dieting your whole life, it is beautiful. It is amazing to be able to just eat a bunch of food, good food that fills you up, feel energized, and have a lot of the things that stressed you out before just not be there. It gets rid of food noise, gets rid of appetite issues and all of that. And then you can go after some fat loss from that point. If you have a little extra weight to lose, I would start with a fat loss phase, but keep it short, maybe 2 or 3 months at most, and then come out of it. And then you're going to have to build at that point. So tactically, it's that. In the gym, I think we talked about the 10 to 20 hard sets a week. We talked about, I think I didn't mention it, but training close to failure, like within 2 to 3 reps shy of failure is the general consensus. And then using the right days per week equipment and approach that just you enjoy and like is sustainable for you. Because as long as you're progressing, what we call progressive overload, and you're lifting more reps, more weight, more sets, whatever, and you're feeling stronger, you're good. Like you're making progress toward your aesthetic goals, which then you can reveal later on through fat loss. So I think you asked about finding balance, and I kind of subtly answered it along the way that there are trade-offs, but they don't have to be at odds. All of this stuff can improve your health. And if you focus it from that way and avoid extremes, I think you'll be good.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This was amazing. And I love how we split this and how we get to, just speak on this from like two different lenses, and just being able to have this information to help bring clarity to our listeners. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
100%. I love that we've challenged ourselves to think of it from those different perspectives. It's a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Alrighty. Hope that you and everyone listening has a great rest of their day. Bye.